Don, Steve, great to see you guys. Excited about the Blue Like Jazz movie that's coming out, and many of my blog readers are as well. And so, yeah, I thought maybe we could start out by just kind of talking about your guys' personal background. I'd love to hear maybe from Don. I know everyone knows you write books, but in short, how did you get to that journey of writing Blue Like Jazz? And then Steve, I hear you're also known for your music. I've had some comments about, hey, is he ever going to do music again? So maybe you can throw a little of that into how you got into movie making, and love to hear kind of your journeys.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I grew up in Texas and always wanted to be a writer when I was a kid, and ended up moving to Oregon and worked at a little publishing company and kind of saw behind the scenes how writing worked. Wrote a book at night that a different publisher published, and didn't sell very many copies. And then I liked it. I liked doing it as a hobby. And then wrote Blue Like Jazz. After that, just trying to pay rent, and that book took off. So I sold my publishing company. I owned one at that time, and a tiny little company. And the rest is, I became a writer because the demand to, do readings and those kinds of things trumped publishing, and it was a good move. I miss being anonymous a little bit, just doing business. But I'm very grateful for that book. Of course, it's the reason that I know Steve now, and we got to work on this project. It's been a good journey.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And Steve?
I grew up in Denver and went to Colorado University in Boulder, studied music, and they had a small film department then. And so I took all their classes, and I wanted to do both. I wanted to be a musician and I wanted to be a filmmaker. But the music opportunities came first, and I thought it'd be easier to be in a rock band in my 20s and a filmmaker in my 50s than the reverse.
Yeah.
About 8 years ago, I switched over to filmmaking, and this was the second movie. This one took a while to get off the ground, but we're really glad to have it done and happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And talk about this movie a little bit. I mean, how Don, your book really took off, and I had one person say something like, "You've given voice to a whole generation of angst in Christianity and also hope." And so I can assume Steve approached you with a lot of intentionality, but how did that kind of relationship come together, and this idea to make this book into a movie? How did that all come about?
Steve approached me at a book reading. He was making a movie in Nashville, and he had a dog-eared copy of the book and was seeing it as a film. And I agreed. I thought there were a lot of visual elements that could contribute to a movie, and so we began to we sat down and worked for a few days and kind of came up with some plot points that we might, to some degree, fictionalize some plot points because the book is a series of essays. And we knew pretty quickly we had a story that was worth telling. Yeah. And so worked for another 9 months or so and got it down.
That's awesome. So it took 9 months to get the script together?
Yeah, the initial pass of the script. I think Steve continued to work on it for years, and then he would pass it around to us to look at some of the changes that he made. While we were raising money,
yeah,
just kept running the script. So we hope it's a really good script by now.
Yeah.
Enough time into it.
Man, yeah, the raising of money, I mean, that's all grassroots kind of support, is that right?
Yeah, Steve, tell the story.
Well, yeah, it didn't start off that way. Originally, it wasn't an expensive movie, but it was enough that we needed to go to private equity. And so we had a lot of meetings with people of means, and I just assumed this was going to be easy because it was a big bestseller and the script was strong, and I just thought it had everything going for it. And over the next 4 years, we just couldn't get anywhere. We had one guy in particular in the Northwest that came on early and has always been a great support and is one of the reasons we're here. But we just couldn't get past a certain threshold to get the movie made. Finally, it got to where we were going to lose our lead actor, Marshall Allman. We had to go back to work on this show, True Blood, the day after Thanksgiving. So we had a window where we had to get the movie done or it wasn't going to happen. And we found another guy in LA who was going to put up the rest of the money, and we set everything up. And on the eve of opening our production office, the LA guy dropped out. So at that point, we were out of luck, you know.
Yeah.
I called Don up and I said, "You're not going to believe it, but after 4 years, we can't start this movie." Don was, you know, upset as well, and wrote a blog about it the next day and just said, "Sorry, we've given it our best, but the movie's not going to happen. We tried, we failed. We apologize."
Yeah.
And then all these people started writing back saying, "This is an important movie. You got to make it. And I don't have any money, but I could give you $25, or I could get my friends together. We could, you know, pool a couple $100 to help you make it."
Yeah.
And some guys in Franklin, Tennessee, Zach Pritchard and Jonathan Fraser, sent us a video, and they said, "Look, we don't have any money, but we really want to see this movie made. Why don't you let us start a project on this relatively new website at the time called Kickstarter.com, and it'll be the Save Blue Like Jazz campaign, and we'll get the movie funded, and this story can get to the screen." And you know, Don and I talked about it. He said, "You want to meet with them?" I said, "Yeah, I don't have anything better to do." We met with them. They were really great guys, very enthusiastic, very idealistic.
Yeah.
I just thought after 4 years that they were naive, because I knew how hard it was to raise money. And I checked the website, and at that point, the most any movie had raised like $40,000 to $50,000. I just didn't see how this could happen.
Yeah.
We needed $250,000 in 30 days. Our other investor said he'd match whatever we came up with, but still $125,000 goal had never been even attempted on Kickstarter. And but they started the campaign 6 days later, and in 30 days, 4,500 people gave us $345,000 to make it.
Wow.
So it was astounding. It was the biggest raise in Kickstarter's history at the time, and that's why we got to do it, because all these fans of the project across the country and around the world, you know, gave us money to make it.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. So I'm sure you're hoping a lot of that momentum and energy is going to help get this movie going. We're really excited out here to get a chance to see it. So.
Thanks. Yeah, we're definitely feeling it across the country. You know, we're on this 30 bus tour, and we have Kickstarter backers coming out every night, and it just seems to be a lot of enthusiasm.
Yeah, that's great. And so, kind of in the movie making journey, I mean, what would you say was the most exciting and most frustrating? Maybe you've already said it. Is that the high and the low point, or are there other high and lows that you would consider sharing?
Well, it is. I hate to reduce it to money, but it's just a reality of making even an independent movie. It's hard to do anything for less than $1 million. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And everything about this process has been really inspiring, except for the fundraising. And I remember when Don talked to me, after we'd gotten the video from these guys who want to do the campaign, Marshall said, "Steve, I feel like we've made a great story, but the story of our fundraising is not a good story. The story of going around the country trying to get wealthy people to give us money, that's not a very inspiring story." He said maybe this will make a better story. And sure enough, that ended up being the highlight. There was nothing like that 30-day Kickstarter campaign and, refreshing the screen every few minutes and wow, where did that come from? And it just kept going and going and going, and the momentum was thrilling, and it was a real sense of community that developed.
Yeah, wow, that's great. Maybe to change subject just a little bit, we alluded to it a little bit ago. Don, here you have this book, and it's written kind of in small chunks, and you're trying to put it into movie form and create some sort of narrative arc. Was that a challenge? How did you go about creating this kind of narrative flow?
Well, we all agreed, the three of us who were writing it, that we would have to fictionalize elements of the story, and every good movie adaptation of a book has to do that. There's just no, if they don't, the movie doesn't work because it's a very different medium.
Yeah.
And even the fact that we have visual characters on a screen is now an interpretation of a book.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So we had to do that, and at each plot point we would say, okay, what would be the best story here? What would be the most engaging? And we would sort of debate those ideas. And then, as a secondary, how true is this to the book? How far are we getting away from the book? so that readers are angry at us for telling a completely different story. Those were the tensions. And then, so there's a line that you actually walk, and we have had none that I know of people who were frustrated that it didn't represent the book well. But that's a common question. Certainly we obeyed the not laws, but the principles, if you will, of the story. And wanted to engage the audience. How to engage the audience is pretty proven. And so form was very important to us. And Steve is really great at taking liberties and knowing when to take liberties without losing an audience. And so I think it turned out really great. And I feel like it's essentially true. It's the feel of it, the location, characters. For instance, we have a character that represents kind of the whole student body at Reed, because you can't represent the whole student body. It would be a very, very long film. So we synthesize that into one character. And I think decisions like that, creative decisions like that, make the film enjoyable.
That's awesome. That's great. And I was wondering, talking about the movie specifically, I'm guessing kind of what I've gathered from people who have seen the film in pre-release and folks I've talked to, that it's a film that deals with the raw realities of life too, and so you guys here are dancing in the tension of, this is a quote Christian book. You're producing something that wants to be authentic to what the real experience of life is like as you're trying to figure out spiritual things. What has that dance been like? Because I know on one end of the spectrum, you're going to be dealing with very traditional, conservative kinds of folks that maybe, the raw stuff rubs them wrong and rubs them a little too raw, right? And then there's folks like me and some of us younger types or whatever that are cool with that. We think that's what we live, that's what we know. So what's that dance like, and how is that maybe either limited or opened up great opportunities?
Well, we from the beginning, we knew we needed to tell a truthful story. And, the book gave us a lot of permission to do what we did. Because the book is known for its honesty and its vulnerability and its humanity and its... I think that's part of why it became such a big bestseller, is because it was something different, It was the kind of book that I felt like when I read it, not only I felt like I had made a friend in Don Miller, but I felt like I could give this to anybody and they would get it. And there's not that many books, with Christianity as the kind of subtext that I could do that with. So we knew we wanted to tell a truthful story. There's a dance that you do anytime you tell a story for the screen of how far do you go, what's realistic versus what's gratuitous. We tried to get that mix right. Originally we didn't think we could pull this off without an R rating, and our distributor told us it had to be PG-13 or it would be really tough to sell. And we thought they were right, and we saw The Social Network and thought it did a good job of being realistic and still getting a PG-13 rating, so that way we can pull this off. And we were able to barely get a PG-13 rating from the MPAA. It was like a split decision, but they went with that. And it's kind of what you were saying. People that have a problem with the content are probably not going to be our audience to begin with. And so there was no reason to make a movie for people that don't go to movies, or they go to movies once a year because it's whatever this year's quote-unquote Christian film hit is going to be. We wanted to make a movie for people that go to movies every weekend.
No, that's good. That's helpful. I think I personally appreciate the fact that I know I'm going into a movie that's going to deal with life and deal with actual journey towards figuring out what this God thing is all about. And so thanks for being honest and real about that. And I'm sure you're going to get more applause than frustration from that. Success. I mean, for both of you guys, like what does success look like? One of my readers asked, does it look like fan reviews, Rotten Tomatoes scores? What's going to make Blue Like Jazz a success in both of your eyes?
I'm really curious to hear what Steve would say. We haven't actually talked a lot about it. We have hopes, but we've never you know, he may be hoping to do well in Germany. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, the reality is when we get a positive review, we kind of we read sentences to each other on the bus, and it encourages us. So that means something.
Yeah.
I think box office success. We've all got a lot of years and even our own finances in the movie, and not only our finances, but our investor who we've come to love. We want to do well by him, and then our Kickstarter backers, 4,400 people that we don't want to let down.
Yeah.
And then we have nonprofits who are receiving a percentage of the profits of this film. We want to be able to contribute to them. So there's a financial piece that means a lot to us. But I think the real hope is that, you know, that people would just come up to us a year from now or 2 years from now and say, you know, I was really lonely when I watched that movie. And I walked out thinking there are people like me. And not only that, but I met somebody else who talked about that film. And we found a common ground and we were able to connect because he told that story. I think, you know, if we can hear a lot of stories like that, it's really encouraging to us.
Yeah, yeah, totally. That's great.
And then honestly, the ability to make another movie if we want to.
Yeah. Blue Like Jazz 2?
with aliens, yeah, with aliens.
Yeah, with aliens, yes. And you're, and Will Smith, right? Yeah.
That's right.
That was good. That's right.
We would take, actually, if Will would do it, we'd write it.
Hey, I love it, love it. And Steve, how would you maybe add to that?
Man, honestly, like what Don said, I honestly I think you covered all the bases.
Yeah.
That's really good. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you know, this was a story that was important to us, and we took all the risks that we took because I was hoping that we could capture some of that magic of the book and, you know, put it on the screen. There was no way to do a direct translation of the book to the screen, like Don was saying. But if we could capture some of that sense of put the book down, I just remember the sense I felt was, oh man, I feel a lot less lonely right now. I feel like there's a guy who's saying what I wanted to say, you know, and like the same way that I feel like I could give that book to anybody. Hopefully, people will feel like, oh, I can take anybody to see this movie, and they're not going to come out with their arms folded in their garden, you know. They're going to be surprised.
Yeah, and maybe to build off of that, as we kind of start wrapping this up a little bit, two-pronged question maybe. First of all, you know, I haven't quite seen the film yet. I've heard things and I'm excited about it. So when it comes to the Central Valley, I'm going to be stoked, by the way. Midnight showing, maybe, I don't know. But I don't know how you dress up for one of those midnight showings, Blue Like Jazz. But anyway.
You need to dress like a sexy carrot.
Oh, I like it. Two-pronged question here is, okay, so is it fair to say that maybe, how do you portray evangelicals or conservative Christians in the movie? Maybe that's half of the question. And what do you hope, like a non-Christian type person walking out? I mean, you've talked about loneliness. You know, I don't get the impression they're going to walk out and, you know, singing "Just as I Am," praying a prayer. Like, so like, talk about the evangelical kind of piece, and then maybe talk about, okay, so how does this speak to non-Christians? And maybe loneliness and those kind of things are the key theme. But yeah, a chance to maybe expand just a tad.
I think evangelicals, Christians are depicted very fairly in this movie. We have one church where we've got a character who's somewhat cheesy, and not only cheesy, but he's a little bit shady. Yeah. But he's, you know, there are other people at his church who are not, and ultimately there are people who are caught up in it who are doing the wrong thing, but it's understandable because they're really lonely, and so I hope but you know, movies, as Steve says, tend to live on the edges, and so you do create a, you know, if you're on the most godless campus in the country, you want to be in the most cheesy church in the country.
Yeah.
That's in the BBC.
Yeah.
And then there's another church in a movie that is very balanced, very respectful, very sophisticated, and very forgiving, and it's really the best face you could possibly put probably on Christianity in America. And then the hero of our movie is an evangelical who expresses her faith through social justice. I think one of the things that we're getting is people say, well, this characterizes Christians poorly. And I think it's a very unfair criticism. There's one character in the entire film who's kind of a shady character.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of Christians who are heroic. So for them to only see that one thing, I think is to judge us as filmmakers and to presuppose we had some kind of agenda there, which we didn't.
Right.
And so it's frustrating me to hear that we're doing that. But I'm sorry, but that's you know, if you look at statistically, we're all humans.
Yeah.
There are cheesy Christians in the world, so
yes,
that exists. So, sorry.
I think if you grew up in an evangelical Christian subculture, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was pretty goofy, you know.
Yep.
And we all remember it, you know, and you know, some of the frustration and even embarrassment that we carry about that stuff, unfortunately, translates into our other relationships, and it starts getting to the place where we start confusing, you know, this certain ridiculous parts of the Christian subculture with Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what our character does. He realizes when he says, "I'm ashamed of Jesus," it's like, how ridiculous is that? I'm tying in, you know, Jesus with this subculture that I grew up with, and they're not the same thing, you know.
Yeah.
And so, I, you know, it's provocative in that sense, but it's supposed to be provocative because I think a lot of us get confused, and that's a lot of what, you know, Blue Light Jazz was about. Is you know, Don, it took him going to Portland and hanging out at this most godless campus in America to realize that, hey, wait a minute, you know, this shame that I feel isn't to do with the person of Jesus. It's to do with, you know, elements of this subculture that I grew up with that, frankly, I should be apologizing for.
Yeah, and maybe on that note, for non-Christians then, is this kind of an opportunity for them to see, hey, there are some transparent folks that are wrestling with this cultural baggage that we have? And my final question for you guys would be to maybe comment, you don't have to give away the scene, but a lot of people are wondering, okay, confessional booth, or, you know, this whole confession piece that's in the book, in the movie. I know a lot of folks are getting excited about that because that made a big impact on them when they first read the book. So maybe to kind of wrap up, how would you tie all that together without giving away some of the thrust of what you guys are going to do when we see the film?
Well, the first part of the question was to do with before we answer the confessional booth. What was the first part of your question?
Oh, well, about the Christian subculture and how non-Christians maybe perceive that, hey, we're not all that way.
Yes, that's right. We felt like one of the frustrations that expressed in the book Blue Light Jazz is we understand why people outside the church, you know, are critical of Christianity, but it bugs me that they think that we're blind to all that stuff, you know, that we don't know what's going on, and that we're not self-aware enough to know that, you know, this is why they've got problems with Christianity. And we get that, and that's part of the beauty of this movie, and I think of the confession scene in particular, is, you know, we should be apologizing for those things.
Yeah.
And the main reason initially that I wanted to make the movie was because I love that confession scene so much. It's like, I want to see this on screen. So we've gotten a pretty awesome response to the scene so far, and hopefully your readers will feel the same way when they see the movie.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey guys, thanks a lot. Don, Steve, great to meet you. We'll sort of meet you in the world of the web here and maybe in person someday. But thanks for taking some time with me, guys. And we'll hopefully hear great things about the movie as it opens up in theaters. Is there any last thing you guys want to throw out there before we close our time?
Just thanks a lot.
Thanks, and Friday, April 13th.
Awesome. You guys have a great day.
You too.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.